The story of Herschel Park is perhaps Slough's best kept secret. A secret maintained for roughly 170 years, since it was first built in the 1840s. This film will unearth the forgotten history of a once valued Slough treasure, to its redevelopments, crises and eventual decline.
I first became aware of Upton Park when doing some work on the 1851 census, which shows how special an area it was even at that stage.
Although in disrepair over the past few years, the land including Herschel Park was once an ancient estate of the Manor of Upton, with roots dating back to the Anglo-Saxon period. The fields, known as Wimble Fields, were purchased in 1821 by a tenant farmer on Upton Court Farm.
A local farmer by the name of Mr. Pocock decided to sell off part of one of his farms in the parish of Upton.
He offered the land for sale in 1842, saying that here was a site for a new town, villas, etc., near to the Grand Railway Station, near to Eton and Windsor, containing all the advantages of dry, rich soil, delightful air, excellent water, and surrounded by roads and scenery equal to any in the kingdom. So this was just the farmer and his agents selling the land.
The land was bought by James Thomas Bedborough, who was a local politician and builder in Windsor.
In 1838, the Great Western Railway had reached Slough, and by 1840, the first railway station was built.
The actual station was built here to serve a village, really. It was a village of Slough.
It was during this time of growth and expansion that the story of Herschel Park truly begins.
As soon as the station arrived in Slough, then this became interesting to London capitalists, if you like, the capitalists of London and the builders, and they obviously looked at Slough to improve it.
The citizens and the Corporation of Windsor had tried to get the railway there, but the Great Western Railway were keen to get to Bristol as quickly as possible, and so they took the direct line through Slough and Maidenhead.
Herschel Park's beginnings as an informal, elegant parkland begin with James Thomas Bedborough. Born in 1787, he was the owner, creator and builder of the Upton Park estate. Bedborough's history as a building contractor in the early 1820s includes restoration work on Windsor Castle.
So Bedborough had grand designs, which never actually came to their fulfilment. He built about 20 or more houses, but overall there were plans for perhaps 50 to 60 houses, and throughout the 19th century the fulfilment of those plans, or the potential fulfilment of those plans, was to become quite a problem.
Unfortunately, he ran out of money and he was only able to build a small proportion of it, which consists of three main parts. The first part is the Victoria Terrace, which is the main block you can see as you drive along Upton Park. And then on either side was East Villas and West Villas. The buildings were designed by an architect called Benjamin Bowd, who Bedborough would have known from his work at Windsor Castle.
The villas were strictly for members of the Victorian middle and upper classes. Extravagant properties leased directly from Bedborough.
The houses that Bedborough built can be seen in the park today and are really very important architecturally. And people really ought to go and look at them carefully, because they are very fine examples of upper middle class housing of the 1840s.
Of the four entrances to the estate, three had lodge houses complete with entrance gates. Until the 1930s, the lodges were occupied by liveried gentlemen in charge of controlling who was allowed onto the estate.
If you'd been to church and you were dressed up neat and tidy, then perhaps you were possible to go in and have a look in the Herschel Park part, which was kept, like private gardens almost, and that had a much fiercer park attendant, to make sure that nobody played with balls or hoops or ran around there too much.
The pleasure ground itself was rather informal. The southwest corner was dominated by a small lake, divided neatly in two by an elegant stone bridge. The park was filled with plants and shrubs, serpentine paths weaved throughout the ground.
The purpose of the park was to provide a central space to the buildings which surrounded it.
A park for the use of these residents who he was attracting away from London or away from Windsor to this terrace.
The land, later termed Herschel Park, had become a fashionable home for the upper classes. But then came crisis. Bedburgh died insolvent in 1860, and his family were thrown into turmoil.
He had no money to leave to his children because all his money was tied up in mortgages. So the children were very anxious about this, and it led to a court case which lasted for over 70 years.
His son, George Bedburgh, was left in charge of his father's debt-ridden estate.
He died in the 1860s when he committed suicide by shooting himself, and his death certificate is there indicating that he shot himself by his own hand.
Although there is no firm evidence for this, it has always been thought that the design of the park was influenced by Sir Joseph Paxton. Paxton is famous for designing the Crystal Palace, an iron and glass building famously built to house the Great Exhibition in 1851. Not until 1952, nearly 100 years after Bedburgh's death, were the grounds renamed Herschel Park, after the famous astronomer Sir William Herschel. Herschel Park, a once valued treasure of Slough, a secret maintained for roughly 170 years since it was first built in the 1840s. £2.7 million has been invested by the Heritage Lottery Fund to restore Herschel Park back to its Victorian glory, so that it can once again be enjoyed by the people of Slough.
The new park will be a restored open space which the people of Slough can enjoy again.
I mean, anything to tidy it up and make it look nice again is a jolly good idea.
As now it's become a secret park, if you like, and not many people can be seen in there now, so it'd be nice to restore that whole idea of community within the park.
What they're doing, they found the original historic drawings for the park, and the ones which they couldn't find, they've had an archaeologist working with us to sort of plot where the paths and features used to be in the park, and we're now actually returning the park back to its former glory using those original drawings and designs.
The site had been a little run down, or it was still being reasonably maintained, but it's lost all the shrubberies, all the planted areas. There's new paths.
We've got twin lakes here, with a bridge that used to be a very ornamental bridge that goes over the two lakes, sort of joining them in the centre. So the lakes, which have been dry for best part of 10 years now, are being relined, re-sculpted back to the original sort of layout of how the lakes used to be.
I think the restoration project will have a huge benefit to local people. The park has been transformed by the restoration project, going back to the original pleasure gardens, but also the restored nature reserve as well. I think it'll make a big difference in terms of public facilities for local people at the park.
A lot of the people around the middle of Slough will be working in offices and such like. I would have thought it's quite pleasant in half of the year, the summer half, to have somewhere where you could go out and sit out on a bench and have your lunch in a garden.
The benefit this park will actually give to Slough and the people, especially living around it. It's been a park that's been, well, frankly, it's been neglected. It's lost a lot of its character and features over the years, and it's not really a place that many people go to anymore. A lot of people, if you mention to them, have you been to Herschel Park, they don't even know it exists, and that's going to completely change that. We've got an enormous programme of activities once the park's actually open. People taking part, volunteering with the restoration works and the wildlife management as well of the site. So it's going to be on the map. There's signs all over the place. There's a big programme with the museum, putting it all together. So it's going to benefit lots and lots of people, and they'll know it's here.
Slough Museum is the education partner, so we are trying to ensure access to the park but also raise awareness. We're building the relationship between schools and between the park.
Volunteers have now been with me right from the beginning, so at the beginning of March since I started here, and we started off with just 1 or 2 to start with, and now we have a regular weekly turnout of anything up to 12 people each week. Task will have ranged from bird box making, bat box making, bug hotels within the wildlife area.
I volunteer in the park because I used to use the park a lot way back in the 90s, and it was just a beautiful, relaxing place to come. And I think it's a shame that it's been kind of left to go to pot, really.
Slough has a really rich heritage. Herschel Park is just one part of that. It's really important for local people to actually connect to where they live, and a huge part of that is finding out about the heritage of the area.
The future of Herschel Park is very bright. As I said, it's had years of neglect, and now a lot of money has been spent on it, and a lot of sort of people's time and management are going to be sort of given to the park in the future.
John Betchman, when he asked for bombs to be dropped on Slough, probably had not visited Upton Park and Herschel Park. If he had, he might have not made that infamous statement.
We now have a restored park which the people of Slough can now use and enjoy, hopefully for another century, if not more.